Okay, so I guess it's a good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. I think we can get started with the introduction so that we have a full hour here of things to discuss. I'm not sure I can see how many people are joining, but in any case, if today we have a really great session planned for everybody. I will start by introducing our speakers and panelists. I'm Bia Carneiro. I'm a research team leader at the Alliance of Bioversity International and CIAT, where I co-lead digital innovations flagship area of CGIAR FOCUS Climate Security. Also from the Alliance, we have here Giulia Tucci, who holds a PhD in information sciences, and she's a visiting researcher here with us in digital methods. We have our partners from the University of Molise also here. Juliana Resche is Associate Professor of Economics at the university and a visiting Senior Fellow at the International Inequalities Institute at the London School of Economics. And Nicola Caravaggio is a Research Fellow in Public Economics also at the University of Molise. And then we're also very happy to have Kirsten Johnson joining us. She directs USAID's Famine Early Warning Systems Network, FuseNet, which is, as most of you know, a multi-sectoral agency flagship program managed by the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance at USAID. So this is the group that will be talking to you today. And let me just start sharing my screen so we can get right to it. Let me find the right tab here. Here we go. So I am sharing my screen. I hope everybody can see. If anyone's having problems, please let us know. So we've already introduced everybody, and the session today, the session that we're leading today is called Monitoring Food Security Trends in Digital Spaces, a multi-platform approach to Nowcast food insecurity. And the agenda for today then is a brief presentation on the multi-platform framework to Nowcast food insecurity that we've been working on in partnership with FuseNet. And then and this will be presented by myself, Giulia, and Nicola. And then we will have a discussion with Kirsten and Giuliano on the applications of this type of digital platforms analysis for food insecurity early warning. So how this type of data and this type of analysis can support the work that is already done by USAID. And then we will have time for an audience Q&A. So please feel free to post questions in the chat box or in the questions box, and we will address them at the end of the panel. So I am going to start with the let me just minimize here the screen. Okay, so I'm going to start with a short rationale as to why we think that digital platforms research is relevant for food security analysis. As you know, there's a growing significance of internet-based information flows. This is the internet and digital platforms are now an established part of most of our lives, and almost 2/3 of the world's population now has access to the internet, either through computers or through mobile technologies. So this presents an opportunity for us to develop a framework that can integrate different digital platforms to try to nowcast and explain social phenomena. And we wanted to apply this idea to monitor food security in global South countries, focusing specifically on the countries that FuseNet monitors through their analysis. And why is it important to look at food insecurity? Because as most of you here are probably already know, despite years of decrease, there's a current upsurge in food insecurity. And to address this challenge, we need to understand the various factors that contribute to the issue. And while hazards to food security like climate shocks, conflicts, market disturbances, these are all extensively monitored through many traditional quantitative and qualitative means. We think that the application of digital platforms analysis can enhance and can support having more localized knowledge about potential areas of concern. So I'm trying to, there we go. The research objective for this framework or for this project was to establish multimodal, so looking at various different types of platforms, and multimedia, so looking both at text, images, and different affordances of these platforms, to create a model that monitors events from different perspectives to try to identify potential early warning signals that arise from this type of data and ultimately helps inform policy actors and support early action. And the reason online spaces offer opportunities for us to do this type of analysis and to visualize contemporary issue dynamics is because digital traces are accessible online. So everything that we do when we navigate digital environments is recorded, and we're able to retrieve some of this information. The analytics also leverage on dynamic features and affordances of online media, so we can use the different features and the different contents that we retrieve from these platforms to customize and to develop different types of models and derive different types of insights. And also because digital platforms provide data like metadata, like links, hashtags, mentions, and other types of affordances that we can structure for systematic analysis. So essentially, we can take all of the different types of content, of media, of affordances that circulate in these different platforms, and we can retrieve and structure this for digital methods analysis. So our framework essentially relies on the foundations of digital methods, which is a theory that tries to explain social phenomena through online dynamics, and specifically we use an approach that's called online issue mapping approach. So the premise here is that we can no longer separate the digital from the online from the offline. The two spaces are co-occurring and are complementary. So we are then able to use the information that circulates and the dynamics that circulate online to explain society or to explore social interactions, social transformation, and so on. And with online issue mapping, essentially, we're using a set of digital techniques that try to detect, analyze, and visualize topical affairs. So we're leveraging textual, visual, and network analysis to try to understand how issues are formed and how they circulate in digital environments. So this is an interdisciplinary approach, and we aim to answer questions like, is this topic an issue? Who are the actors that are talking about it? What are their animating concerns? Where are the issues happening, both geographically and also in terms of spaces where these issues circulate and where people talk about them. So here, what you're seeing is essentially a visual summary of the platform, the integrated multi-platform framework to Nowcast social phenomena that we've been developing. And as I said, the objective then is to Nowcast so that we can support early warning, in this case, looking specifically at food security and food insecurity. We use online issue mapping, and we applied this approach to 3 different data streams. So first, we're looking at social listening. So looking at social media, instant messaging, and how people in general, the general population, let's say different users of these different platforms are talking and what are talking about the issue, or what types of information are they circulating about the issues that we're interested in. We're looking also at media monitoring, so looking at news media and how the news landscape is framing topics related to food insecurity. And then we're also bringing in a third component, which is search interest analysis, where we're looking at how people are searching on different search engines, and what can this tell us about people's concerns or people's attention to particular topics of concern. Regarding the sources, then we're working with Telegram for social listening. We're working with a partnership with Media Cloud, which is an open source media monitoring platform. And for search interest analysis, we're looking at the Google search engine through Google's service called Google Trends. And we will break these down for you in just a few minutes. So just to expand a little bit on what kinds of information we expect to get from these different streams. So for social media, we're trying to understand and to gain insights into the interests, the concerns, and the opinions of a broader, more general public of social media users. With news media, we're trying to understand and gain insights into more traditional event coverage. So we're looking here at coverage with more established actor, more established discourses, the expected, let's say, balance and neutrality of news media, which will give us a different perspective in terms of importance and in terms of who are the actors that we can find, and the content that is most relevant in these 2 different dimensions. And so for this, the data collection that we try to extract from these sources is content that is generated both from the countries that we're interested in and also about the countries that we are studying. So we create data collection strategies to retrieve data that circulates, let's say, internally, so within, different types of groups or different types of news sources from within those countries, but then also understanding how people outside the countries are talking about the country. So and also is interesting for us to look at whether there's any differences in terms of priorities and agendas and concerns between people who are, living on the ground, let's say at the local level, experiencing situations, but also how external audiences discuss and cover these situations. So then, in terms of analysis, so the methodology per se, we are working with text mining, so using both supervised and unsupervised techniques. For supervised text mining, we're looking at visual analysis, so applying an algorithm that generates an image caption that describes the different media that is shared on posts. Then we combine that text with text from the actual posts to apply a topic classification model. And this model was developed in collaboration with FuseNet. We've been looking at FuseNet reporting and the different dimensions that are reported by FuseNet in their food security reports, or food security outlook reports, to develop a taxonomy for food insecurity. And what you see, the image here that you see on the slide, is essentially a very summarized version of our framework and also of our taxonomy, where we're looking at hazards, different types of hazards and shocks. We're looking at food security indicators, as well as food nutrition and livelihood security outcomes. So we have a set of topics of interest to us that we try to detect in the content that circulates in these different data sources, as well as the topic identification. So trying to understand the level of attention to a particular topic. We also apply different sentiment analysis algorithms to try to understand how people are, the tone of the messages and the tone of the news coverage. Regarding unsupervised text mining, we apply also an algorithm that identifies significant and emerging terms, so that we can identify topics that may not be covered by our taxonomy, or things that are emerging that are not yet prevalent within what the terminology that we already have. And we also use some algorithms that have been developed by Media Cloud, where they identify people, organizations, geographic coverage through an entity recognition algorithm, as well as word combinations, so bigrams and trigrams, where we can identify whether words that are happening close to each other, whether they can give us some insights into the types of topics and news coverage. So now I'll hand over to Julia, who will talk to us a little bit about Telegram. Please, Julia, go ahead.
Thank you, Bia. So Telegram was launched in 2013 as an instant messaging service, but since then it has incorporated features that transformed the tool in a hybrid platform. So Telegram is positioned at the intersection of messaging app and social media, containing dynamics and environments that is from social media. The platform is increasing its penetration, and it has reached 900 billion monthly active users in 2024. According to its owner, Pavel Durov, it's the 6th most used and most downloaded app in the world. And Telegram has an open API, which allows us to extract data from public channels and groups. Next slide, please, Bia. So in order to facilitate working with Telegram data, we developed Telecatch, which is a public tool to extract, visualize, and filter data from Telegram. So we start from a curated list of groups and or channels, and then we upload this list in the tool to obtain messages, data, and metadata. The user can then visualize the timeline of the messages, and the messages can be filtered by date and or by keywords. So after that, the user can export or the whole data set or the filtered data set, and he can export the messages content and metadata, as well as the image files that are contained in the message. And we provide two formats of exportation, which is CSV and JSON files.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you. So just to quickly talk about the news media, as I mentioned, we are in a collaboration with Media Cloud, and the Media Cloud platform monitors more than 60,000 online media sources, and they with stories being processed daily. And the way we're working with them is that we are curating or working with their existing country collections, where they curate local news media from almost every country in the world. We're supporting this country curation and developing specific queries and data pipelines so that we can extract the news that are circulating within these local sources. So now I'll just hand over to Nicola, who will talk to us about the Google Trends search interest analysis. Please go ahead, Nicola.
Thank you, Bia. So Google Trends represents the most used browser worldwide, and it can be used to retrieve information about what people search online, so they general interest in things. This could be done with the service of Google Trends, which provides data about what people search on the web in the past, but also what they are searching for in real time. Basically, what we do on Google Trends, we type a specific word or multiple words or a topic. We select a geographical area of interest, which could be even the worldwide interest, and we choose a specific time span. Then we obtain some time series, which depict the relative interest according to our search parameters. The interest will be a number from 0, which stands for too low searches, so 0 interest, to 100, which is the maximum interest. And data could be retrieved on a monthly, weekly, daily, and even hourly basis. Here in this graph, we retrieved the interest at worldwide level for food insecurity from 2004 up to a couple of days. We observe a general increase of the interest along time. The characteristics of Google Trends made this tool highly used in several fields, such as finance, health, even labor economics, because it represents an innovative data able to synthesize social listening about specific issues. And for this reason, Google Trends is used in academics for nowcasting and even for forecasting purposes. And for the next slide, thanks. Obviously, before delving into using Google Trends data in order to create a kind of synthetic index of interest for food insecurity, we needed to identify appropriate terms to search over Google Trends related to food insecurity. But words such as food insecurity, not food insecure, or similar ones may be not effectively related to what people effectively feel, think of search on the web regarding the specific topic of food insecurity. Therefore, in order to identify the term most associated with food insecurity, we relied on a taxonomy for food insecurity, the one that we developed for the FuseNet reporting system that Pia previously introduces to you. With this database, we decided to consider all the topics within the macro topic of hazard and shocks. We which includes words and topics like climate, conflict, famine, and so on. We transformed, we created a target variable of food insecurity as a dichotomous one, which assumes value 1 if the record had at least one occurrence for food insecurity and 0 otherwise. Hence, we perform a machine learning algorithm in order to identify the most important predictors for food insecurity retrieved from the reporting system of FuseNet. Next slide. And here we listed all the topics that we used as features ordered by the predictive importance. Here we listed the 10 most important, and we have to stress out that we identified those predictors from the taxonomy we developed from the FuseNet reporting system. And next. from this list, we decided to consider only those predictors positively associated with food insecurity, and we excluded those related to disease because they were too time or country specific. And then we rescaled all the coefficient we obtained from our algorithms, and we are going to use them to create our final synthetic search index. Next slide. Here you can see the various steps we follow to create our final index. So far, I talked to you only about the step number 1. In the step number 2, we created a database of all the FuseNet countries, but also languages. Why this? Because we perform on Google Trends a word search. So we type, let's say, famine or flooding. But we did it not only in English. We consider all the national languages of the FuseNet countries, plus all the most spoken languages worldwide. It means that for each word, let's say flooding, we searched it for each country in more than 20 different languages. However, when we are dealing with Google Trends data, we have to take into account several issues stressed by the literature. So the fact that the articles might change over time, the fact that Google, we always rescaled values from 0 to 100. So we assessed all this issue following the literature. This is the step number 3. And then for each associated country topic, we created a long-run daily consistent index by considering all the languages in step number 2. In the step number 4, finally, we were able to construct our synthetic search index for food insecurity using the weights that we identify in the step number 1. Moreover, in the step number 5, we further applied some further weights to our index in order to make them comparable among countries, and also we also consider the internet penetration that we have in each country we consider. Lastly, we perform a validation of our data using the share of person in severe food insecurity data provided by FAO. And we obtained a statistically insignificant correlation between our synthetic search index and food insecurity. So this means that the higher the percentage of person in critical food insecurity situation, the higher the interest that we retrieve from the web related to food insecurity by using Google Trends as tool. In the next slides, we have an example for Zimbabwe of our synthetic search index on a daily basis, which is synthesized by this black line. And all the colors time series you can see beneath are basically the various components that we have to create this final index. And here, even here, there's a kind of increasing over time for this index, which is a kind of similar to what we observed from the very first example that we showed you for Google Trends data.
Thanks, Nicola. So the next thing we wanted to share with you was just a short illustrative example of how this analysis, or whether to see whether this analysis is able to perceive a current crisis. So we've run an exploratory analysis of Haiti. So looking at using this framework, applying the framework to the context of Haiti to see whether it could pick up the current situation in the country. And Julia will quickly run us through this case study. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you, Bia. So last March, the government of Haiti declared an emergency due to violent attacks caused by gangs in the countries. So these are just some headlines indicating the crisis in the country, just to illustrate what was happening in the beginning of March. Next slide, please, Bia. These are the data sources and the methods we applied to run the analysis. So we use 3 data sources: social listening, which we use a Telegram, extracted 17,000 messages, which 13,000 contained text from Haitian groups and channels, public groups and channels. This data was collected from November 2023 to the beginning of March of this year. We also used news media data, which consisted of 11,000 news stories from Haitian national and local news sources. And we collected the data with a similar time span from the social listening. And we also used the Google Trends data, which was collected from August 2013 to March 2024. Regarding the analysis, we ran a topic classification with the taxonomy that Bia showed before, translated in French and Haitian Creole, which was the language of the messages in the groups, to classify the topics of the collected messages and news stories. We also used 2 packages on R to run the sentiment analysis and to identify the emotions of the messages and the news articles. And last but not least, we did the syntactic search index for conflict, which Nicola will explain in the end. So next slide, please, Bia. After classifying Telegram messages according to the taxonomy, the most frequently found topic were gangs, followed by violence. In the classification of the news media articles, we found that violence is the most frequent topic, followed by gangs. This difference in this result may be to the language used in the content creation. The press uses more formal terms with editorial concern when constructing their articles, while social media users generally send messages with informal language. So in the next slide, please, Bia. This is a comparison of the percentage of the content from the press and from Telegram containing the term gang. We see a higher proportion of this type of content in the press. And this happens because in Telegram groups and channels, besides the messages posted about the conflict, there are exchanges about other types of topics, such as product sales, relationships, and other random subjects. While the press publishes focused information and content. So this slide shows the attention prevalence of the term gangs on Telegram. So we isolated the analysis of Telegram, and we can see now a significant increase in the volume starting from February 2024, which shows a notable rise in public discussion about gangs in Haiti. In the right, there is a screenshot showing an example of a message posted in a Telegram channel about the suspension of aid via the deployment of troops by Kenya to operate in Haiti. And in the next slide, there is a chart that, 2 charts that reflect the sentiment and emotion of the published news above, and the messages posted on Telegram below. So surprise, fear, and anger are the main emotions detected in Telegram messages. The media content indicates a volume of positive sentiment, but also shows sadness and fear as relevant emotions. So this result is expected since the press publishes informative content describing the local situation with a more institutional tone than Telegram users discusses about the conflicts within the platform. Next slide, please. Yeah.
In this graph, instead, we attempt to create another synthetic search index, interest index, not for food security, obviously, but for conflict. It is something in which we are still working on, but we adopted an approach similar to what I've explained for food. In this case, we first identify the predictors for conflict, and we adopted a wide idea of conflict. We consider all conflict-related topics in our FuseNet taxonomy, and then we create the synthetic search index accordingly. Here, we can clearly observe how the general interest for conflict increased over time in Haiti, with a new appraising right during the month of March, when the government declared the state of emergency and curfew. Nonetheless, this increasing pattern seems to be started even before. So it's from this source, we can then we can stress the potentiality for social media to even anticipate some possible occurrence of crisis, so represent a support for the system of early warnings of FuseNet. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. So some final considerations on this case study is just that as we see the tools that we apply and the methods that we apply are able to properly identify relevant current events, and as well as the expected sentiment associated to them. So in a situation like the conflict in Haiti, we expect people to be angry and afraid and surprised and so on, and this is reflected in our analysis. We are able to also see that the coverage of local news media increases since December. So before, let's say, international media started paying attention to the situation. And in Telegram, we see a quick escalation in these conversations even before the media and the international attention. And as well as finally, as Nicola says, we see an increase in conflict-related searches starting also earlier than when the conflict or when the government declared this state of emergency. And the relationship here between what's happening in Haiti and food security is that, as we know, conflict can be a direct or an indirect driver or can directly or indirectly affect food security in a country, depending on how the situation unfolds and the context around the particular situation. So here, the idea is that this type of analysis can support people, let's say, analyzing the situation in Haiti to understand whether the current situation would or would not potentially affect the food security status of the country. And just to finalize the presentation, what we are intending to do with this analysis is to transform our models and our data collection capabilities into a dashboard that we're calling food insecurity trends in digital platforms. And we envision this to be a publicly available dashboard that can monitor potential food insecurity concerns based on focusing on digital platforms and the information that we can derive from these platforms. The idea here is that the user should be able to both visualize thematic cross-country trends, but also drill down on the source content. So filter through the different types of analytics and features that we want to include in the dashboard to identify the news stories and the Telegram content that is driving the analysis. And the idea here is that this can be useful for both local, regional, thematic analysis, so that it provides an additional source of data to support, to complement, or to enhance existing analysis. So these are the slides that we had prepared. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to give the floor to Giuliano and Kirsten. We've prepared a couple of questions for both of them, so I will facilitate this part of our webinar, starting with a couple of questions for you, Kirsten. So thanks again for joining us today. We're really happy to have you here. And what I wanted to hear from you is that if we consider all these various dimensions of FuseNet's food security monitor, how do you think that news, social media, search engine data, how can it support the analysis done both at the country level and thematically?
Sure. Thanks for that, Bia and all. We are really excited about how you've been able to leverage these new data streams and new methods and generate this kind of analysis. we feel like it gives us another stream of evidence that we can leverage in both for our needs at FuseNet, as well as could be leveraged by other actors in the humanitarian, as well as the development community, as well as people in the countries where we work and where these events are happening. So in terms of how this kind of analysis can support early warning analysis, both at the country level and thematically, I think I'd like to start by contextualizing the acute food insecurity situation globally. The COVID pandemic generated a marked increase in global acute food insecurity the trend hasn't slowed down, right? So what we're seeing and what we're observing is this continuous upward trend, such that since about 2019, levels of acute food insecurity worldwide have almost doubled in the countries that FuseNet monitors. And so the number of people requiring emergency food assistance, this tremendous increase in human suffering, frankly, has really been driven primarily by conflict and climate variability and change, as well as economic factors. And one of the things that we're observing amidst this continuous increase is the fact that in many cases, acute food insecurity is emerging in places that we haven't seen it before. So, for example, in the past, FuseNet would not have been monitoring places like Gaza or Lebanon because they were not acutely food insecure. And now FuseNet is monitoring those places. And at the same time, and so these are things that are being driven by emerging conflict and emerging economic crises. Similarly, we are also seeing the emergence of or exacerbation of acute food insecurity in places far from where the driver of that food insecurity originated. So here I'm thinking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, right? So Ukraine is not a food insecure country, and yet this war has exacerbated acute food insecurity in places far from Ukraine, like in sub-Saharan Africa. And so, you know, when we are faced with a world that is, you know, we're observing differences in how, you know, there has always been a set of countries that's particularly vulnerable to acute food insecurity. And now there's this emerging dynamic where we're also seeing acute food insecurity coming out in places that we wouldn't normally expect to look for different reasons. And so what, you know, if our remit is to really get ahead of some of these crises before they result in worst outcomes, we would benefit from a tool that allows us to monitor for emerging food insecurity. This analytical approach really allows us to have not only you know, earlier signals of emerging crises in places that we may not be routinely monitoring on a month-to-month basis, but it also allows us to have a more granular understanding of dynamics related to acute food insecurity in a specific country in a specific cultural context. And so that, you know, listening in on these conversations, understanding that, you know, in this particular place, violence has emerged, you know, what can we learn about the differences between, you know, acute food insecurity accruing from gang violence in a place like Haiti versus, you know, the nature of violence that's happening in West African countries, for example, with violent organizations there. How can that understanding of the emerging violence and the national and cultural context in which it's happening, how can these methods allow us to have more insight into the dynamics of how those the instability and the conflict is generating acute food insecurity? By being able to understand that, it allows us to tailor interventions, humanitarian response, or even, you know, on the development programming side, USAID's programs in many cases have crisis modifiers so that when situations change on the ground, it allows more flexibility to pivot and be responsive. So having, you know, not only an earlier warning in cases where acute food insecurity isn't normally observed, as well as a deeper understanding of local dynamics will be very helpful, not only on an individual country basis, but the same insights can allow for more nuanced understanding across national contexts, across geographies, that can help us identify new ways of looking at these problems. Just stop there and back to you, Bia.
Thanks, Kirsten. So, how do you think that a tool like the one that we're trying to build is useful for practitioners, food security practitioners, but also to the humanitarian community more broadly? How do you think that people could use such a tool?
Right. So, I mean, I think so. In terms of its immediacy, the immediacy of kind of catching something that we need to flag and watch more closely and doing it earlier, it tends to speak to more of the humanitarian context, because humanitarian response is designed to be kind of more rapid and responsive. And so I think it lends itself very well, in fact, to humanitarian context, because it throws up that early signal. It may not say, hey, you have to act here now, but it does say, hey, you need to pay attention here now and monitor for how things are evolving. And I think the similar thing can be said for the development side. And again, I mentioned earlier crisis modifiers. So, for example, agricultural programming, there will be maybe a 5-year program, and there's a certain set of activities that are meant to be undertaken. But if some of the findings that you're generating here indicate, hey, there's a more protracted, there's a problem emerging, it could be more protracted, and we start to monitor that information, and that early warning can help development programs make pivots in their approach that will, result in better adapted programming that's more responsive to actual conditions on the ground, which can be helpful. It allows for the flexibility that you can adapt to emerging conditions on the ground. I think, yeah, I'll just stop there. Thanks, Pia.
No, thanks so much for these really great answers. I'll turn to Juliana now. And Juliana, I wanted to hear from you what you think are the advantages, but also the challenges of working or collecting and working with digital platforms data in comparison to other traditional data collection methods that we normally use in the social sciences, like surveys, interviews, and so on.
Thank you, Bia. Thank you very much, also, Kristen, for this. Well, as you have been showing, and how the people say that, citing the Make It 2012, people are more and more working the generators because they're mobile phone, online shopping, social network. They produce tons of data. And that's the point that digital platforms, as they have been showing, contain torrents of data that, in order to be analyzed, need specific competencies, because they are big in the terms of the famous 3V, high velocity, variety, volume, but also additional V added by social scientists, saying that, of course, there is more veracity when you increase the number of platforms that you use. There is more variability, but for policy, of course, there is a lot of value. And indeed, the advantages are mainly and can be connected to 2 main points. The first one is that it is low cost. So you can have some data with less cost than a traditional survey, for instance. Furthermore, there is the possibility to process this kind of data in real time, so closing the time gap technical between observation and analysis if we use traditional services. Well, what are the challenges? First of all, problem of privacy and transparency. Consider, for instance, the Cambridge Analytica case was the first case in which they were recognized that when they use their daily life activity, someone can use this kind of activity, monitoring you for something good, but also sometimes for something bad for the human. Other points are connected to the quality measure, because of course, there is no representative in just one single platform. Telegram, Julia mentioned that has 900 million users, of course, but it's just 1 or 10 of the total population. You don't know whether a specific country. And the other point is that they belong to private companies. So private companies, certain point, can stop you to download this data, or can even ask you to pay for obtaining this data. So when you use this for, as in our case, social services for international organization, of course, this poses a problem in terms of the sustainability of a monitoring based on this kind of data. Well, how can we moderate and mitigate this kind of challenges? Of course, a multi-platform strategy that you showed could be a way, because if Telegram stops, give you data, you have other source of data. Furthermore, if Telegram is not representative of all people, maybe you can use Facebook in which the age is higher. So diversifying is the strategy to mitigate this kind of challenges.
Thanks, Giuliano. And regarding then the framework and the tool that we've been developing, do you think that we would be able, that it's possible to incorporate predictive analytics to support even more the forecasting of food security issues?
Oh, yes, because yeah, we have been talking about this kind of data, but of course the challenge is extracting information from this kind of data. And for extracting information, you need models. So theoretical model, you need knowledge by expert. Of course, the natural outcome of these tools is nowcasting, but we are now working to try to use these kind of tools also for predicting phenomena. But the difference is mainly that in prediction, particularly the work on Nicola shows that in prediction, we want to identify the determinants of a phenomena that we can observe in this kind of data generator. In this case, Nicola used the knowledge extracted by the FuseNet reporting that we use and we put in our model to make a predictor model. Because when you transport simply nowcasting into prediction, you need theoretical model, you need standard data as we use it, and you need also a machine learning model that in the years, in particular nowadays, it has been shown a great potential in terms of predicting power. The forecasting is the next step of this, because forecasting was like to do something to forecast phenomena based on what you observe now. We are now still working on this kind, because which is the more challenging, mainly because in addition of requiring a machine learning model, you also require additional data for training the machines, and you also require additional knowledge that we are thinking now to extract again from the official documentation of the organizations.
Thanks, Giuliano. I have a final question for both you and Kirsten. Maybe we'll go back to Kirsten to hear your thoughts, Kirsten, on what you think is the added value of leveraging digital platforms for policy and for decision making.
I mean, you know, just to the extent that we are able to have a kind of a routine stream of information that allows us to look at, you know, our core phenomenon of interest, in this case, acute food insecurity, or as Giuliano was just mentioning, the drivers or risk factors of that key outcome of interest, and also mitigating factors. So this is one thing, you know, we tend to look at, you know, what are the things that are driving in our case, our primary interest is acute food insecurity, but we could also use this kind of system to help us look at those factors that allow communities to mitigate or be resilient to things like climate, changes in the climate. Understanding those factors can allow both program designers and managers, as well as policy decision makers, to have more insight into where the optimal location for intervention into emerging dynamic might be, and what kind of intervention should be taken. So are there signals related to emerging conflict? Can we bring our conflict experts to look at the findings from your analysis and say, okay, if we take this particular programmatic approach for conflict prevention or conflict mitigation, then we can alter the situation so that we can prevent worse outcomes. And so I think, again, to the extent that, this serves as a very timely, a very timely stream of evidence that we can rely on to give a signal that, we need to pay attention and start thinking about what we might need to modify and how we're supporting communities in the places where we work. I think the value add speaks for itself. Over to you, Pia.
Thanks, Kirsten. Giuliano, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much, Pia and Kristen, again for this good. Yeah, of course, good decision require good data, and in the case official statistics are not really available. Some countries, as Kristen said, they are not monitored because they don't have food security. Then, of course, the use of this kind of data can provide something that is better than no data at all. It has been shown that for short-term prediction, digital platforms are really helpful and can help understanding the phenomena. But of course, in order to have a long-run analysis, in order to plan, you need to rely on the standard form of the data, because they are made for this kind of analysis, they are made for planning, they are made for having structured evidence. So I think the future is integrating these two kinds of data, trying to complement the standard data with something for alert, for instance, progressive risk assessment, risk alerting, but that start from a model and start from standard data, of course.
Thanks, Giuliano. Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks, everybody, for your questions and for the presentations. I've just checked our Q&A box, and there's no questions, additional questions to address. So I think we can close this session. And I wanted to thank again everyone for making the time for being here. I know it's really early in the morning for you, Kirsten, so we appreciate it. And we hope to continue this conversation as we progress in this project and develop new tools and new methodologies. So I don't know if anybody wants to say any final words, but no.
Thank you for the good work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks, everybody. So yes, have a good morning or a good afternoon to all of you, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.